We just recently did a tour of Twister trimmers. And during this tour, we realized there's a lot of technical know-how behind this product. So we got Brent Anderson, one of their techs, to give us the lowdown and all the information associated with their fantastic trimmer. I've personally used Twister for many, many years, and I really, really enjoy using the product. That being said, there's a lot of technical know-how that comes with this product. So the next video is all about the frequently asked questions associated with Twister trimmers. So thank you so much for watching Growing Exposed. Please like and subscribe. What works better, dry trim or wet trim?
Wet versus dry, there's pros and cons. Dry, you can actually end up trimming a little bit faster, but it also takes a lot more effort from a processing standpoint in your operations. It actually adds a whole nother step. So when you dry trim, you need to dry it to around 11 to 13%, trim it, and then you'll have to have your curing process after. Where for wet trim, basically you cut it down, put it through the machine. The downfall is from wet trim is that when it does cut, you end up with this cauterization that actually will bleed the plant a little bit, much similar to cut grass. And when you're cutting the grass, that smell is actually the plant telling the other plants, watch out, danger's coming. Weirdly enough, cannabis does the same thing.
Yeah, Twister's on its way.
Yeah, it's coming. Once you're in the conveyor,
it's game over.
It's game over. Other than the batch one, all of our machines will work wet or dry. We actually offer a few different sizes of tumblers for that. There's a standard size, which can work on dry as well, but you might end up with a little more trim than you'd like, so we have a narrower size that generally dry trimmers will use.
Manufacturing so many different types of trimmers, why does barrel size matter?
The way we define how big these barrels are is actually by looking at what we call the surface area to volume ratio. So what that is if you're looking at the end of the tumbler here, you're probably gonna have about this much product of actual buds kind of flowing through. As you can imagine, everything that's seeing the wall, that's what's actually getting trimmed, and everything that's in the center isn't getting trimmed. Based on the sizes to get the throughput that we want the most amount of surface area with the least amount of volume in there. And that also comes into our speed control, which will let you basically speed it up. If you think of it as going faster, it will kind of spread out your buds. And if you think of it going slower, it will kind of make them closer, and based on different densities. Basically, just to make them fit right in here, that's why we have each size the way it is.
On the actual blade inside the machine, does the size of that blade matter?
Does the size of it matter? Not so much. So the reason for that is when you have a tumbler and this blade underneath, all there is a little tiny slot. That's what the flower sees, and that's what does all the work. So if you say have a really big blade with 200 blades on it moving really slowly versus a really tiny blade with 5 blades on it moving really fast, what the tumbler actually sees is exactly the same.
Why is speed control so important on T4 and all your machines?
Speed control is really important because a common misconception is more is faster. So turn it up to the max, you're gonna get the best throughput. That is not the case at all. It's really more about optimizing how it's flowing through the tumbler. So if you have really light and kind of larfy buds, they're gonna behave completely differently than really high density, big or small buds or whatever you have. We all know it's completely different every time. So the goal with the speed control for the tumbler specifically is to be able to get that flow where they're rotating. So a lot of times if you fill the tumbler up too much, you can get this kind of tube that just rotates along with it. I like to call that the burrito effect. Basically what that means though is only the outside of the burrito is getting trimmed and the inside is basically staying the same, and the product coming out is gonna look really bad. Once you can speed it up and down, you can really get rid of that burrito and actually optimize your throughput rather than just saying more is better.
You've got bypass control for the airflow, you've got tumbler speed control, and blade speed control. How do all of those three interact with each other?
It might sound kind of simple because there's only 3 variables, but they all actually kind of work together a little bit, but I'll try to simplify it into what each one kind of does by itself. But with that being said, they all kind of work together a little bit. So starting with the tumbler, basically what tumbler speed does is it kind of changes how the buds flow through. So what you want is you basically want like a perfect little wave of little buds spinning around. So when you're looking down, you want it about 1/3 full and just like this nice little breaking wave like you'd see on a beach. If you see flops or whatever, then you either need to speed your tumbler up or slow it down to be able to get out of that kind of floppy cycle. Once you get rid of the flopping, it really improves the quality because now you have more sides of the bud getting trimmed. For the blades, the reason why you want to slow those down is for the quality of your trim. So some people prefer larger chunks, and when you slow the blade down, it's kind of like putting a card through a bicycle spoke. Faster it's going, the card can't really get through, but if you slow that wheel down, the card can get through quite a bit. So by doing that, that gives you larger leaf. And then finally, the vacuum speed control. So the reason why you need this is basically for very light larvae buds. So when you set these up, basically what you want to do is you want to tilt the angle so that the vacuum is just barely holding in the buds. So like the perfect scenario is you put one bud in, one bud comes out. Obviously, it doesn't actually happen in real life, but that's kind of what you're aiming for. So when you have really, really light buds, sometimes once you get to the max incline, they're still not coming out. You're still not getting very good quality. That's when you'd have to lower down your vacuum suction.
So it basically stops the bud from pulling up against the side of it.
Exactly. Yeah, so in those scenarios, what sometimes can happen if you have too much vacuum with not enough tilt, the product will just stay in there, and then you'll end up with low yields, which you do not want to get.
What do I need to do for maintenance on these machines? And do I need to sharpen the blades?
Maintenance-wise, these are actually quite simple. The stainless version actually has solid core bearings, so they don't even require any bearing grease at all. As far as the standard edition, that will just require a couple of pumps of grease every 600 hours or so. And then as far as the blades are concerned, as long as you have them properly adjusted, they do not require any maintenance. So they basically kind of self-sharpen as they're running together. You just have to do a couple clicks, maybe once a month type thing. And as long as those have a little bit of contact, they will just stay sharp for years to come.
Perfect. And you want to be able to hear the blade hitting ever so slightly, correct?
Yeah. So if you hear nothing, that's probably a problem. The goal is to have it actually cut paper. So if you read our manuals, what it actually tells you to do is spin the blade by hand and put a little piece of paper in. And you should see that cutting basically the same as scissors, like no frays, a nice clean cut.
One of the features your trimmers have is a nitrided blade. What exactly does that mean?
So nitriding is a thing that they call a case hardening process. And what that means is it basically makes the outside really hard and brittle with the inside staying tough and soft. Most people don't really think of this when they think of materials, but if something like a knife, if you snap it, it's just gonna snap, it's not gonna bend. Where something more like just like a regular old pipe, you bend that, it's gonna bend. That's brittle versus tough. So with case hardening, you get the best of both worlds. You get the outside being really hard, which you want for a knife, but the inside still stays tough so you don't break blades. So it benefits our machines because it basically makes the blades last longer. It makes them wear out slower, which will make them last longer, and also provides corrosion resistance, which will prevent rust.
How do I avoid getting so much plant material and resins built up on my trimmer?
There's two simple things you can do. First off, if you're trimming wet, you need to water the brush. So usually we advise using as cold water as possible, basically ice water. You put that on the brush every 5 minutes or so. What it does is it makes a nice little layer of cold water on it, and that will prevent anything from sticking. But with that being said, the blades underneath will then start to get more and more built up. Best thing you can do is trim in a very cold environment.
How cold?
What I always tell people is as cold as your employees are willing to work in, but at least around 15 degrees Celsius, you're gonna see significantly less buildup.
Is there any other way to collect the trim off these trimmers other than the conventional vacuum system?
Yeah, so we have two options. Obviously conventional black, which you'll see on the left here. And then this is what we call the trim saver. Basically what it does is it uses a cyclone to separate the trim from the air. So as the vacuum pulls, it will pull the air up. It'll start cycling around like this. And as it cycles around like this, the particles actually get enough momentum to overpower the suction going up. So the amount of momentum going this way is more than the amount of momentum going that way, which means you end up with basically a bin full of trim and almost nothing coming through the other end.
What measures have you guys done for safety mechanisms to ensure that the consumer doesn't cut themselves?
These machines are now fully CSA, UL, CE approved. Basically what that means is now it comes standard with one of these guards. We used to have plastic guards, now we actually have stainless ones that require a tool to remove, not necessarily, but if you are running in a legal facility in Canada, a tool removal is required. There's also a belt guard here, so you can't actually get your fingers into any of the moving parts. And not really safety related, but kind of machine safety is the whole control box can actually come off. So when you're cleaning it, you don't have to worry about damaging any electronic components because they are sitting in the corner nowhere near your machine.
Why is that so important?
I don't know if you've ever dropped an old phone in. iPhones these days have the fancy waterproof, but this right now does not have waterproof. So if you get that wet, your machine will stop working, which is a very bad scenario.
How do you go about cleaning a machine like this?
Actually just coming out with a product called a COP, called the Twister Ultra Clean. The way an ultrasonic cleaner works is it sends these little sound waves through the water, and it creates little air bubbles between the metal and the dirt. So it literally is exploding these little air bubbles between metal and dirt, and it just blows the cannabis off of it.
Blasts it right off.
So that is our latest and greatest way. Otherwise, if you don't want to make that investment, it's still very easy to clean. All you have to do is take off the guards, take off the control box. The tumbler and the shrouds come off very easily. And then you can basically pressure wash it, use a steam cleaner. Can't steam clean the brush, but everything else, more than welcome to. Really, because there's no electronics on here, you can kind of do whatever you like. A lot of people have different ways, but I'd say ultrasonic is going to be the easiest.
How does lean manufacturing principles and single-piece flow technology get incorporated into a T0?
Our whole kind of company is based on this principle, not only while operating machines, but while building them too. So we try to keep our supply chain as tight as possible, and what that actually allows us to do is spend way more money on R&D, which will then give us way more better products in the future. Basically, the single-piece flow idea is how you start from one side and go towards the end. So generally in a facility, you will have either your dry room or your harvesting, bucking room or whatever. Then it will flow into this room, which will then flow out either into your curing or your drying rooms, however wet or dry. So being able to keep everything moving, it's much like Subway, how you'll notice they make sandwiches way faster than any other company, and it's because they will do one step at a time in the right order and not stop. Versus, say, other companies that would have one person building one sandwich, you can't actually go as fast.
Yeah, it all comes down to efficiency then.
Exactly. Our goal is to create cannabis at a high quality for the lowest price.
Well, where does a customer buy a product like this?
Best option is either a local retailer. We're actually growing rapidly in Europe right now, and basically anywhere in the world we'll ship it to you right now.
Where can someone go to find more information about Twister?
Twistertrimmer.com will direct you anywhere you need. We also do have a great technical support team, as well as our salespeople will do online demos very happily. So